What's up? Today's Tuesday, 2 days after the Super Bowl. The Broncos had their big celebration, Super Bowl parade in Denver. Over 1 million people came to cheer on, celebrate their team and everything. We know what that was like 2 years ago here in downtown Seattle on that frigid, cold day for those of you who went to that. But, looking forward to the day when we can do another one like that. But congratulations to the Broncos and Broncos fans. They got to enjoy that, so good for them. On the flip side, good old NFL MVP Cam Newton doesn't disappoint. Today, I thought even after Sunday night with the press conference that he had, that maybe today he'd come out kind of being a little bit more humble, maybe say something again to redeem himself. Instead, did the opposite. He comes out saying that he's a sore loser, and he said, "Show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser." That was his quote. And basically went on to say that he doesn't care what anybody thinks. He's not going to do what people expect him to do or behave in some way that people think he ought to behave. And he's just going to keep doing what he does because that's how he is. He's just being himself. Well, if that's himself, well, good luck. Good luck keeping a team behind you and your fans following you, because like I said before many times, you can do all the antics you want when you're winning and everybody still loves you. But when you start losing and hitting some adversity, that's when everything comes to the front. Everything comes to the test. Your character, your team's character, and even the character of your fans. We've been put through the test many times and seen players fold. We've seen fans fold. We've seen teams fold. And it's the teams that don't buckle under adversity and let it get to them emotionally that have a chance of coming back and fighting. That's why last year when we made it to the Super Bowl the second time around was coming back when we had a bad start to the season. We're 6-4 and almost out. Came back and made it back all the way to the Super Bowl. This year, same thing. Started off 2-4. Fought to come back to get back into the playoffs when nobody gave us a chance. And those are the things you have to overcome. And I think this is only the first of the hurdles that the Panthers are going to face moving forward. But Cam Newton doesn't see it that way, and I'm actually happy about that. If he thinks that's the way to do it, well, just keep doing it then. But maybe he'll look over and see what had happened to other players. Like, look at Colin Kaepernick, what he did. There was a time when he was on top of the world. He went to a Super Bowl. He was looked at as the unstoppable guy with a rocket arm and unbelievable speed. And he was one play short of winning a Super Bowl. And what happened after that? Team with one of the best defenses in the league, one of the best teams in the NFL, quickly fell off the face of the earth. And Kaepernick lost his team too. And you don't see him kissing any more biceps. And that was kind of his signature thing. Sound familiar? Anyway, so we'll see. We'll see how he bounces back. But, 2 years in a row is hard to do. Super Bowl appearances, and even just to have a season like they did. It is hard to repeat that in this day's NFL. But I wanted to talk also about back to the game itself, because Newton also tried to explain his behavior on that fumble, the second fumble that led to the last and final touchdown, where the ball got knocked out of his hands by Von Miller, and the ball fell down at his feet. DeMarcus Ware was the only guy really there, was in his reach. Cam Newton could have jumped down and grabbed it, and instead it looked like he kind of jumped out of the way of it, like he was kind of scared of getting involved in it. And it's been the topic of sports radio all around the country, and he addressed it today. A lot of us were wondering to see how he would explain that one, and his answer was that he didn't want to get injured on it because he felt like his leg was in an awkward angle and then he might have gotten hurt if he tried to dive for it. Superman, please. All right. If you're Superman and you are everything that you've blown yourself up to be, and it's all about you, that's not an excuse. a guy your size, a guy as supposedly indestructible as you claim to be, you don't shy away from that. You don't avoid the possibly game-changing play because you think you might get hurt. That's just me. I've never been in that situation, of course, but we all could see it, you know. You think of other players. What other players would have avoided that situation? I know that I can confidently say in our quarterback that never would have happened. Okay, that's what happens when you give up. It's what happens when selfishness, ego kicks in, because the desire to preserve oneself is greater than the whole of the team. I might be getting too deep on that, but that's my feeling on it. All right. Anyway, switching gears, a lot of you have asked me about the defense. Obviously, the storyline of that game was the Broncos D and how they shut down Newton and as well as Brady in both those games, the championship and the Super Bowl. And some have asked me, well, can Seattle do that? Is it something that Seattle's got the personnel to do? Is it something that they just don't have the people to do it? Or is it a scheme thing? Obviously, Von Miller and Marcus Ware are outstanding outside pass rushers. And I kind of compare it back to, we had that defense in Super Bowl 48. And you look at that and say, well, we had a lot of the same players. Why were we so much more dominant then, especially on the defensive line, than we are now? Well, the biggest thing you have to look at, while we had Cliff Averill, we had Michael Bennett, we also had Chris Clemens, we had so many guys who we've lost since then, but we had the biggest strength of our Tony McDaniel. We had so many guys, all these guys who we had depth, crazy depth in that year, 2013, 2014, Super Bowl 48. And that allowed us to keep guys like Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill fresh. They weren't playing nearly as many downs as they do now because we just don't have as many players on the defensive line, because we could afford to keep all these talented guys. We had guys who were playing second string who could have been starters and are starters or became starters on other teams. So a big difference there was simply that our guys, we could rotate them in, and we had fresh legs all the time, and they were good. We were constantly rotating fresh guys, and it allowed us to keep the pressure on constantly, and we had that kind of in multiple positions. So that was a unique situation, and obviously that wasn't going to stay for long because we had free agency, and players eventually have to go on and move on to other teams, and that's what happened. We lost a lot of those guys due to free agency, and that's what happens, So our depth took a hit, and we ended up having to, play guys for longer times, and that's a long time to play. Eventually, you do kind of tire out and things like that. But that was that's one thing on the personnel side when I compared it to our dominating defense of the Super Bowl 48. But the other thing I thought I saw, differently, just sort of scheme-wise, that Seattle. Or I saw the Broncos doing, I'd like to see Seattle do, is they managed to shut down two of the game's most efficient tight ends or talented tight ends from the Patriots and the Panthers. Gronkowski and Greg Olsen. Those guys have been nightmares for other teams. Greg Olsen in particular for us. And what did they do? How did they do it? You hardly heard Greg Olsen's name mentioned during the Super Bowl. But one thing I noticed is that the Broncos were doing is they would not allow the tight end to get a free release. He'd come off his route, and instead of just kind of being able to run unimpeded and just turn and hook or run into his position, so a linebacker or a lineman or a corner would chip him, hit him, so as he's coming off the line, he's kind of stumbling out of his route. And so when Brady or somebody else goes to look and see where he's going to be at, he's not in the position he's supposed to be in because he's been knocked off his route because they bumped him off his route right off the bat. They were doing that really well, and I thought that was something I didn't see Seattle do hardly at all. Too many times we saw tight ends just going straight down the field, right down the seam, and beat us, in the end zone, or get a first down or whatever. Happened against the Panthers, happened against the Bengals, and too many times. So that's something I think we could do better at as a team defensively. The other one is blitzing. One thing I've noticed the Broncos do with their blitzes is that they have very unique twists to it. Instead of just sort of shooting a gap, they'll have a guy come out this way, delay, and then come back around to the other side. Even DeMarcus Ware from the right side of the defense or the offensive left side would look like he's going to rush up the side, and then he would stop, come around, and attack from the completely on the other side. He has the speed to do that, and it worked really well. So I'd like to see Seattle do a little bit more if they're going to blitz, to get a little more creative with the blitzes, mix things up, change directions, get a little more confusion to the offensive line. I'm no defensive guru, but I just noticed that's what other teams, or the Broncos, had success against other teams, and it worked really well. So I'd love to see more of that, and see if we can get Seattle's defense to become even step up, become more like the elite defense they were a couple years ago. Obviously, the defense is the key to beating some of these teams like Carolina and really getting in their heads. So that's it for now, guys. We'll talk to you soon. I'm off to play some volleyball. And anyway, enjoy your week. Coming at you with more videos. Stay tuned. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. All right, this is NorbCam. See you later. Go Hawks.